After the catastrophe of the 3rd century, the world was in search of a new hope. The old gods had grown weak. The edges of the swords had turned blunt. Then a sign appeared in the skies of Rome, a cross, and a voice echoed, "In this sign you shall conquer." In a single night, the Rome that had crucified Jesus Christ was about to bow down before him. But while religion was changing in the West, in the East it was raining gold. In India, a king arrived whom historians call the Napoleon of India. This was the era of the Gupta Empire, India's golden age. This was the century where Santa Claus broke someone's jaw in the middle of an assembly, where an emperor killed his own wife in boiling water, and where Kalidasa was talking to the clouds and Vatsyayana was writing the Kama Sutra. 300 AD to 400 AD. In these 100 years, old temples will burn and new books will be written. Rome will divide. Get ready to witness history's biggest turning point, where science, religion, and magic will collide. Welcome to the 4th century. Let's start with fact number 1. Incident number 1. The dream that changed the world. Constantine's vision, 312 AD. Roman Emperor Constantine was going to fight a civil war, Battle of Milvian Bridge. The night before the battle, he saw a cross in the sky and heard the words, "In hoc signo vinces," "In this sign you shall conquer." He had that symbol painted on his soldiers' shields and won the war. This was the moment when Rome, which used to drink the blood of Christians, became the greatest protector of Christianity. Incident number 2. The Napoleon of India, Samudragupta, 335 AD. In India, King Samudragupta of the Gupta dynasty conquered the entire country from north to south. He never lost a single battle. Historian V.A. Smith called him the Napoleon of India. The truth is, Napoleon should be called the Samudragupta of Europe, because Samudragupta lived 1400 years before Napoleon, and unlike Napoleon, he did not have a tragic end. He died as a conqueror. Incident number 3. Santa Claus's punch. St. Nicholas punches Arius, 325 AD. In 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea was held. There, Bishop Nicholas, the real Santa Claus, got so angry at a priest named Arius that he punched Arius in the face in front of the entire assembly. Just imagine, the calm and lovely Santa Claus broke someone's jaw. He was even jailed for this crime. This was Santa's bad boy version. Incident number 4. Boiling the wife. Execution of Fausta, 326 AD. Emperor Constantine was certainly great, but he wasn't exactly a family man. He suspected his wife Fausta of having an affair with his stepson, or that she had framed him. He chose a horrific way to kill his wife. He locked Fausta in a boiling steam bath, where she died a painful death from suffocation and burns. Incident number 5. The new capital, Constantinople. Founding of Constantinople. Constantine left the city of Rome and established a new capital in Turkey, Nova Roma, New Rome, which was later called Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. This city remained the richest and safest city in the world for the next 1,000 years. While all of Europe was in the Dark Ages, Constantinople was shining bright. Incident number 6. Rust-resistant iron, Iron Pillar of Delhi. Around the 4th century Gupta period, Indian metallurgists created the Iron Pillar, which stands today near the Qutub Minar in Delhi. It has been braving rain, sun, and pollution for 1,600 years, but it has not rusted.
How they applied a protective layer of phosphorus, misarwit, on the iron is still a case study for scientists today. Incident number 7. Voting on God. Until 325 AD, Christians could not decide whether Jesus was God or the Son of God. Constantine organized a voting. In the meeting of Nicaea, it was decided by a show of hands that Jesus and God the Father are of one substance. Those who opposed, like Arius, were excommunicated. This was the democratization of religion. Incident number 8. The world's first university? Nalanda begins. Although the full development of Nalanda happened in the 5th century, this region of Bihar had already become a center of education by the 4th century, Gupta period. Students from all over the world started coming here. The entrance exam here was so difficult that only 2 or 3 out of 10 students could pass. The gatekeeper himself used to ask questions to the students and would not even let those who failed enter. Incident number 9. Julian, the last pagan. Julian the apostate. In 361 AD, Julian became the emperor of Rome. He wanted to turn the now Christian empire back to paganism, idol worship. He reopened the old temples. His attempt failed. While dying in battle, his last words were, "O Galilean, Jesus, you have won. Vixiti Galilee." With him, the old religion of Rome ended forever. Incident number 10. The 64 Arts of Kama Sutra. By the 4th century, Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra had become very popular in India. It stated that an ideal woman or man should know 64 arts. These arts did not just include romance, but also teaching a parrot to speak, performing magic, making perfumes, and swordsmanship. It was a complete lifestyle guide. Incident number 11. End of Olympic Games, 393 AD. The ancient Olympic Games, which had been running for 1,000 years, were shut down by Emperor Theodosius I. Why? Because the Olympics were held in honor of the Greek god Zeus, and for a Christian emperor, this was idolatry. The Olympic flame was extinguished and was lit again only in 1896, 1,500 years later. Incident number 12. The Musician King. Samudragupta was not just a warrior, he was also an excellent musician. On the gold coins issued by him, he is shown playing the veena. There have been very few kings in history who were experts in both the sword and the veena. He was also called Kaviraj, King of Poets. Incident number 13. Sunday Holiday. Do you like having a holiday on Sunday? Thank Emperor Constantine for that. In 321 AD, he made a law that on the venerable day of the sun, Dies Solis, people in the city would not work. He did this to please both the Christians, who went to church on Sunday, and the sun worshippers, Mithraism. This was the world's first official weekend.
Incident number 14. Destruction of the library. Destruction of Serapeum, 391 AD. The Serapeum in Alexandria was the last remaining part of the ancient Great Library. In 391 AD, a Christian mob, considering it a house of idols, destroyed it and burnt the books. This was the final nail in the coffin of ancient knowledge. Thousands of books on mathematics, astronomy, and history fell victim to religious anger. Incident number 15. Invention of stirrups. In the 4th century, the use of a stirrup was first seen in the horse saddles of the Jin dynasty in China. It is the iron ring in which a rider places his foot. This small object was the greatest military discovery in history. Now, a soldier could sit on a horse and swing a heavy sword without falling. This same technology later made Genghis Khan and medieval knights invincible. Incident number 16. The first Bible, Codex Sinaiticus. In the mid-4th century, the Bible was written for the first time as a complete book, a codex. Codex Sinaiticus is the world's oldest surviving Bible. It was handwritten and contained some books different from today's Bible. It is still preserved in the British Library today. Incident number 17. Final split of Rome, 395 AD. After the death of Emperor Theodosius, 395 AD, the Roman Empire split forever into two pieces: the Western Roman Empire, capital Milan/Ravenna, and the Eastern Roman Empire, capital Constantinople. They never united again. The western part, the original Rome, would end in the next 80 years, but the eastern part, Byzantine, would last for another 1,000 years. Incident number 18. The Hallelujah Victory. In Britain, Christian soldiers, led by Saint Germanus, faced Saxon raiders. They had no weapons. Germanus told the soldiers to shout loudly. The entire army shouted, "Hallelujah! Glory to God!" together. The echo in the hills was so terrifying that the enemies thought a massive army had arrived and fled in fear. Victory without a fight. Incident number 19. Kalidasa, the Shakespeare of India. In the court of the Gupta Emperor Chandragupta II, Vikramaditya, there was a great poet named Kalidasa. He wrote classics like Shakuntala and Meghaduta. In the 4th century, he made the clouds a messenger. This was the concept of ancient WhatsApp, sending a message to his lover via clouds. Incident number 20. Murder of a female mathematician, Hypatia's early years. At the end of the 4th century, a great female mathematician and philosopher named Hypatia was active in Alexandria. She was a star in a world filled with men. She was so famous that people came from far and wide to study under her. Her tragic murder happened in the early 5th century, 415 AD, but her work flourished in the 4th century. Incident number 21. Vikramaditya in disguise. There is a famous historical story, Devi Chandraguptam, about Gupta Emperor Chandragupta II, Vikramaditya. A Shaka king had demanded his elder brother's wife, Dhruva Devi. Chandragupta dressed in the queen's clothes and went to the enemy camp in a palanquin. The Shaka king thought the queen had arrived, but from behind the veil, Chandragupta drew a sword and beheaded him. This was a spy thriller-like mission that won him the throne. Incident number 22. Death of a priest in a toilet. Death of Arius, 336 AD. The Christian cleric Arius, who had previously been excommunicated from the church, was pardoned by the emperor. On the day he was to be readmitted to the church, he suddenly felt sharp stomachache and ran towards a public toilet. In the toilet, his intestines burst out, and he died there due to blood loss. His enemies said, "This is a curse from God." His supporters said, "This is poison." It remains a mystery to this day. Incident number 23. Chinese traveler Fa Hien's India, 399 AD. At the end of the 4th century, the Chinese Buddhist monk Fa Hien traveled on foot across the Gobi Desert and the Himalayas to reach India. He wrote an eyewitness account of Gupta-era India. He wrote, "The people of India are very happy. They do not have to register their land. The king does not give physical punishment or death sentences. He only imposes fines. This was India's most peaceful time." Incident number 24. 8 lakh versus 80,000. Battle of Fei River, 383 AD. In China,
The small army of 80,000 of the Eastern Jin dynasty faced the massive army of 800,000 plus of the former Qin. This was one of the largest battles in history. The Jin army spread a rumor that the Qin army has lost. This caused a stampede in the Qin army. So many soldiers died in the stampede that the flow of the river was blocked by corpses. 80,000 defeated 8 lakhs. Incident number 25, the world's first hospital, first public hospital, 370 AD. Saint Basil built a complex called Basilad in Turkey, Caesarea. It wasn't just a church, it had housing for doctors and nurses. It is considered the world's first charitable hospital, where the poor were treated for free. Before this, doctors only did home visits, and only the rich could afford the fees.
The Beard Hater, Misopogon, 363 AD. Emperor Julian wrote a strange book titled Misopogon, the Beard Hater. In reality, it was a piece of satire in which he mocked his own long, shaggy beard because people used to laugh at it. He wrote, "My lice run through my beard like wild animals in a forest." An emperor roasting himself is extremely rare in history. Incident number 27, the invention of crystallized sugar. Sugarcane had been in India for centuries, but around the 4th century, Gupta period, Indian chemists discovered the technique of turning sugarcane juice into granulated crystals. This was called khanda, from which the English word candy originated. When Chinese travelers visited India, they were stunned to see this white powder. Before this, the world used only honey for sweetness. India gave sugar to the world. Incident number 28, the emperor excommunicated. Ambrose versus Theodosius, 390 AD. In a fit of rage, Emperor Theodosius ordered the massacre of 7,000 people in the city of Thessalonica. Following this, Saint Ambrose, the bishop of Milan, barred the emperor from entering the church. For the first time in history, an unarmed priest made the world's most powerful emperor bow down. To seek forgiveness, the emperor had to wear commoners' clothes and perform penance for weeks. This was a clear sign of the church's rising power. Incident number 30. Ujjain, the center of time, prime meridian of Ujjain. In the 4th century and during the Gupta period, the city of Ujjain was the center of the world for Indian astronomers. Just as we measure time from Greenwich, GMT, today, ancient India measured it from Ujjain. It was considered the 0 meridian. India's entire calendar and timekeeping were based on this city. Incident number 31. The tsunami that changed the map. Tsunami of 365 AD. On July 21st, 365 AD, a massive earthquake, 8.0 plus, struck the Mediterranean Sea. It triggered a tsunami so large that ships in Alexandria were hurled onto the roofs of buildings. This catastrophe was called the Day of Horror. It lifted the island of Crete 9 meters above sea level. Geologists can still see the marks of that day even now. Incident number 31. The Latin Bible, the Vulgate, 382 AD. The Pope commissioned Saint Jerome to translate the Bible into Latin. He prepared the Vulgate. This translation was so influential that the Catholic Church used this version for the next 1,500 years. According to legend, Jerome kept a lion in his cave that acted as his protector. Incident number 32. Poison damsels, Vishaka Kanyas. In Gupta period literature, such as the plays of Vishaka Datta, there is mention of Vishaka Kanya. These were beautiful girls who were given small doses of poison from childhood. Their bodies became so toxic that mere physical contact or a kiss could kill an enemy king. They were the world's early bioweapons. Incident number 33. The Gothic alphabet. Bishop Ulfilas wanted to convert the Goths, Germanic tribes, to Christianity, but they had no written language. Ulfilas invented a brand new alphabet for them. He translated the Bible, but intentionally left out the Book of Kings. Why? Because it contained too many wars, and the Goths were already very warlike. He didn't want to give them any more ideas. Incident number 35. China's Sage of Calligraphy. In 4th century China lived Wang Shiji, known as the Sage of Calligraphy. He wrote the famous Lanting Ji Shu. His handwriting was so beautiful that people would fight over his discarded scraps of paper. Emperor Taizong loved his handwriting so much that he had the original copy buried with him in his tomb. Incident number 36. Great-grandfather of the dollar, the solidus. Emperor Constantine introduced the solidus, a coin made of pure gold, to stop inflation. This coin was so pure and stable that its weight and value remained unchanged for the next 700 years until the end of the Byzantine Empire. It is called the dollar of the Middle Ages. The word soldier comes from this, as they were paid in soliduses. Incident number 37. Removal of the Altar of Victory. For centuries, a statue of the Altar of Victory stood in the Roman Senate House. Every senator would burn incense there before entering. In 384 AD, a Christian emperor forcefully removed it. The old pagans, like Symmachus, pleaded, "Let us grow old with our gods," but they were not heard. This marked the official death of Rome's ancient religion. Incident number 37. Whistling arrows. At the end of the 4th century, the Huns arrived in Europe. They possessed a unique technology, whistling arrows. These arrows had holes in their heads. When the arrow flew through the air, it made a terrifying whistling sound. This was psychological warfare. The enemies couldn't tell where the sound was coming from and would panic in fear. Incident number 38. The 9 Gems, Navaratnas. It is said that there were 9 scholars, Navaratnas, in the court of Chandragupta Vikramaditya, including Kalidasa, poet, Varahamihira, astronomer, Dhanvantari, physician, and Amarsimha, lexicographer. This was the world's first recorded think tank. The king did not take any decision without the advice of these 9 experts. Incident number 39. Barbarization of the army. By the end of the 4th century, very few original Roman soldiers were left in the Roman army. The generals' names were now Stilicho or Ricimer, who were of German or barbarian origin. Romans had become lazy in fighting. They had outsourced their security to the very people, barbarians, they hated the most. This mistake led to the downfall of Rome. Incident number 40. Ajanta Caves, early phase. Although most of the Ajanta caves belong to a later period, a new era of painting was beginning there in the 4th century, Vakataka Gupta influence. They used polished metal mirrors to bring light into the dark caves by reflecting sunlight inside. And the blue color, lapis lazuli, they used was imported all the way from Afghanistan. Incident number 41. The emperor who was burned alive. Death of Valens, 378 AD. In the Battle of Adrianople, the Goths surrounded the Roman army. Emperor Valens, being wounded, hid in a cottage. The enemies did not know the emperor was inside. They simply set the cottage on fire. A Roman emperor who was considered a god was burned to ashes in a common hut, and his body was never found. This was Rome's most humiliating defeat. Incident number 42. Temples and fireballs. Julian's Temple Fire, 363 AD. Emperor Julian, who hated Christians, ordered the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, Third Temple, in Jerusalem, to prove Christian prophecies wrong.
As soon as the workers started digging the foundation, terrifying balls of fire erupted from underground, burning the workers. This happened repeatedly until the work was stopped. Christians saw it as a miracle. Scientists believe it was the bursting of natural gas pockets. Incident number 43. Tea becomes a drink. Before this, tea was used in China only as a medicine or vegetable. In the 4th century, Jin dynasty, people started drinking it for taste and pleasure for the first time. It became a fashion among the elite. If you didn't serve tea to a guest, you were considered rude. The true birth of the world's favorite drink happened right here. Incident number 44. Writing of Puranas. In India, the holy Hindu texts Puranas, Vishnu Purana, Vayu Purana, etc., were only heard and recited for centuries, oral tradition. They were formally written down for the first time during the Gupta period, 4th century. The stories of avatars, Rama, Krishna, Varaha, that we know in Hinduism today are a gift of the written form from this century. The Gupta period gave Hinduism its modern shape. Incident number 45. The flat heads of the Huns, artificial cranial deformation. At the end of the 4th century, the Huns arrived in Europe. They looked very frightening because their heads were long and flat, alien-like. This wasn't natural. They would tightly band bandages around their children's heads from infancy so that the skull would elongate. They considered it a sign of beauty and status, while the Romans thought they were monsters. Incident number 47. Eutropius the eunuch. An unusual event occurred in the Eastern Roman Empire in 399 AD. A eunuch named Eutropius, who was once a slave, became so powerful that he was made consul, the highest office in Rome. Traditional Romans considered this a grave insult. He was the first and last eunuch in history to achieve this rank. However, his enemies had him killed that same year. Incident number 48. Ge Hong and the elixir, Ge Hong's elixir. The great Chinese alchemist Ge Hong spent his life in the 4th century searching for the medicine of immortality. In his book, he accurately described the symptoms of tuberculosis and smallpox. He didn't find immortality, but he significantly advanced Chinese medicine. Incident number 49. Gold coins of the Gupta period, reign of gold. The Gupta Empire is not called the Golden Age for no reason. At that time, even the common public used gold coins, dinara. Fa Hien, wrote that while people used shells, cowries for small transactions, there was so much gold in large trade that India came to be known as the Golden Bird, Sone ki Chiriya. The artistry on these coins was world-class. Incident number 50. Ban on gladiator games, 399 AD. Christian emperors did not like the bloody fights of gladiators. In 399 AD, Emperor Honorius ordered the closure of gladiator schools. Although these games continued secretly for a few more years, the 4th century marked the end of the sport that had entertained Rome for 500 years. Now people became obsessed with chariot racing. Incident number 50. Saint Ambrose and hymns, invention of hymns. Bishop Ambrose of Milan noticed that people were getting bored in church. He introduced hymns and group singing, antiphonal singing. He created catchy songs that even illiterate people could sing. This was a perfect blend of music therapy and propaganda. The choir seen in churches today had its beginnings in the 4th century.
Fact number 51. The world's first factory, state arms factories. The Roman Empire required so many weapons that they stopped relying on individual blacksmiths. They opened government-run fabricae, factories. Here, workers were branded with a stamp on their hands and were forbidden from leaving their jobs. One factory would produce only swords, while another made only shields. This was an early form of mass production. Fact number 52. Chair of Moses. In the 4th century, Jewish religious leaders, rabbis, continued the compilation of the Talmud. A stone chair was kept in synagogues, known as the Chair of Moses. These chairs have been found in 4th century synagogues, such as Chorazin. This shows that despite the spread of Christianity, Jews were firmly maintaining their traditions. Fact number 53. Burning the Sibylline books. Rome had possessed the Sibylline books for centuries, which contained prophecies. The Senate would read them during times of crisis. At the end of the 4th century, General Stilicho burnt these books because they were pagan. Romans believed that as soon as these books were burnt, the luck or fortune of Rome also went up in flames. Fact number 54. Female doctor, Metrodora. Although the exact dates are debated, it is believed that Metrodora, a Greek female physician, was active during this time, 3rd to 4th century. She wrote the book On the Diseases and Cures of Women. This is the oldest surviving medical book written by a woman. She described methods for surgeries related to cancer and infertility. Fact number 56. Rome shrinks. The city of Rome, which once housed 1 million people, saw its population drop to a few hundred thousand by the end of the 4th century. Wealthy people left the city for their secure farmhouses, villas. Rome became a city of ruins and empty houses. Grass began to grow on the streets. Power was now in Milan or Constantinople. Rome held only old memories. Fact number 57. The mystery of Mirauli. We mentioned this in fact number 6, but here is another detail. The name of King Chandra, likely Chandragupta II, is inscribed on this pillar. This pillar was not originally in Delhi, but was erected in front of a Vishnu temple in Vidisha, Madhya Pradesh. It was brought to Delhi much later, perhaps 1,000 years later. How 6 tons of iron were melted and cast in the 4th century remains a marvel today. Fact number 58. Butterfly stool, folding stool. 4th century Roman officials used a special chair, the curule seat. This was a folding chair, similar to today's camping chairs. It signified power can travel anywhere. This chair was a symbol of the king's authority. Fact number 59. Saint Jerome and his lion. Saint Jerome, who translated the Bible, lived in a cave in Bethlehem during the 4th century. In art, he is always depicted with a lion. The story goes that a limping lion came to him. Jerome removed a thorn from its paw. The lion became his friend and used to guard his donkey. This is likely a legend, but it was very famous at the time. Fact number 60. Does the Earth rotate? Aryabhata's precursor. Although Aryabhata was born in the 5th century, by the end of the 4th century, the idea was emerging in Indian astronomy, Siddhantas, that day and night are caused by the rotation of the Earth, not the movement of the stars. This was the foundation of the heliocentric theory which Copernicus gave to Europe 1,000 years later. The Gupta period was a powerhouse of science. Fact number 60. Fear of poison at feasts, food tasters. 4th century Roman and Gupta kings were so afraid of poison that they employed food tasters. In Gupta plays, it is mentioned that peacocks were kept near the king's food. It was believed that if there was poison in the food, the peacock would shriek or start dancing, an ancient alarm system. Fact number 61. The world's first newspaper, the Acta Diurna. By the end of the 4th century, the use of Acta Diurna grew significantly in Rome. These were government notices carved on metal or stone slabs that were placed in the forum, public squares. They contained news of military victories, new laws, gladiator results, as well as important weddings and deaths.
Literate people would read them aloud to the illiterate, spreading information across the city. This was the most ancient form of today's newspaper. Occasionally, it mentioned strange events for entertainment, such as stones raining from sky or the birth of a bizarre animal. Fact number 62. The silver treasure. Mildenhall treasure. In the 4th century, Roman wealthy stored their wealth in the form of silverware. The Mildenhall treasure found in Britain is the greatest evidence of this, consisting of 34 massive silver vessels. These vessels feature carvings of the Roman god Bacchus and sea monsters so intense that even modern machines would struggle to replicate them. This reflects the immense wealth of the elite class of that time. The depictions of Roman gods on these vessels prove that even after adopting Christianity, Roman nobles kept old beliefs and pagan art in their homes. Fact number 63. The mysterious rebirth of Ajanta. At the end of the 4th century, under the patronage of Wakataka and Gupta kings, the second phase of painting began in the Ajanta caves, Maharashtra. Stories of Buddha's life, Jataka tales, were painted on the walls. The colors used were made from plants and minerals, and the technique was so advanced that these paintings would glow in the light of torches, even in dark caves. The details of clothes and jewelry in these paintings show how developed the textile industry was in India at that time. Even after 1600 years, the brilliance of these colors has not faded.
Securing the Silk Route. In the 4th century, trade on the Silk Road was at its peak because diplomatic relations between the Gupta Empire and the Sassanid Empire were good. Chinese silk, Indian spices, and precious gems were sent to Rome via this route. Vast caravans of camels traveled thousands of miles, and sarais, inns, were built along the way, guaranteeing food and safety. At that time, India was the collector of this trade. Goods coming from China stopped in India, and Indian traders added their profit before sending them to Rome, leading to an accumulation of gold in India. Guardian of words, Nonius Marcellus. In the late 4th century, a grammarian named Nonius Marcellus prepared a massive dictionary titled De Compendiosa Doctrina. He selected words from old Latin books and plays that were already becoming obsolete. His goal was to preserve the ancient Latin language for future generations to maintain the glory of Roman culture. For today's historians, this book is nothing short of a treasure. If Marcellus had not compiled it, we might never have known about dozens of ancient Roman authors and their stories. Yoga philosophy emerges. Although yoga is thousands of years old, it was during the Gupta period of the 4th century that yoga was firmly established as a systematic philosophy in texts. Many artworks depicting Lord Shiva as Yogeshwar belong to this period. At this time, yoga was not just physical exercise, but a science of mental peace and liberation, moksha, receiving respect in royal courts. The statues of Buddha and Jain Tirthankaras from the Gupta period, shown in the Padmasana posture, are the greatest archaeological evidence of yoga's widespread influence during this era. The Buddha of Sultanganj, the copper marvel. At the end of the 4th century, a massive copper statue of Buddha was made in Sultanganj, Bihar, standing 7.5 feet tall. It was created using the ancient casting technique known as the lost wax process. Despite weighing over a ton, the use of pure metal and craftsmanship makes the statue look incredibly lifelike and soft. This statue is currently in the Birmingham Museum. Despite being 1600 years old, there isn't a single trace of rust on it, proving the unparalleled metallurgy of the Gupta period. The bloody races of the Hippodrome in Constantinople. Emperor Constantine built a massive stadium called the Hippodrome in Constantinople for chariot racing.
There were 4 teams: red, white, blue, and green. Gradually, the blue and green teams became so powerful that they even had their own private armies. Riots during racing often turned into political rebellions, sometimes shaking the power of the entire city. An ancient Egyptian obelisk brought from Egypt still stands in the center of this stadium today. The Roman passion for chariot racing was so intense that they even used black magic on horses to win races. A new era of mathematics, the Bakshali manuscript. The Bakshali manuscript, written around the 4th century, reflects the golden age of Indian mathematics. It not only contains the symbol for zero, but also provides formulas for solving algebra and complex arithmetic problems. Indian mathematicians of this time developed methods for calculating fractions and square roots that were unknown to the rest of the world. In this manuscript, zero is depicted as a dot. This is the first documentary evidence in the world where zero was used not just as a placeholder, but as a calculable number. The first codex of laws, Gregorian and Hermogenean codes. In the 4th century, 2 Roman lawyers, Gregorius and Hermogeneus, compiled thousands of scattered imperial decrees into books, codes, for the first time. Previously, laws were buried in imperial documents and inaccessible to ordinary lawyers. These books brought uniformity to the justice system and defined punishments for specific crimes. These 2 books later formed the basis of the Justinian Code, which is considered the mother of modern legal systems worldwide. The first Sati record at Aaron, 310 AD. An inscription from the 4th century was found at a place called Aaron in Madhya Pradesh. This is a memorial pillar built in memory of a general named Gopraj who died in battle. The inscription clearly describes that after his death, his wife gave up her life on her funeral pyre. This is the first solid written and archaeological evidence of this Sati practice in Indian history. Although the Gupta period is called the Golden Age, this pillar also reflects a harsh social reality of that time. It shows that this practice was initially limited to military and royal families. Samudragupta's musical devotion, the musical monarch. History calls Samudragupta the Napoleon of India, but his gold coins tell a different story. In several coins, he's shown sitting on a high pedestal playing the veena. This is proof that despite being busy with wars, he was dedicated to music. He was a great patron of poets and musicians and wrote poetry himself. Depicting a king with a musical instrument instead of a weapon on coins was a message that the Gupta Empire was built not just on power, but on the foundation of culture and art. Scientific basis of the calendar, the Surya Siddhanta. At the end of the 4th century, the astronomical text Surya Siddhanta changed the way time was calculated. It contained accurate calculations of the Earth's diameter, planet distances, and the timing of eclipses that are very close to modern science. Based on this text, the Indian Panchang was given a scientific form, allowing for the correct timing of festivals and farming. The Surya Siddhanta stated that the smallest unit of time is Truti, 1/33,750th of a second. This shows how serious Indians were about the precision of time. The end of knowledge in Alexandria. Destruction of the Serapeum, 391 AD. On the orders of Emperor Theodosius, a violent mob of Christians completely destroyed the Serapeum Temple and its library in Alexandria, Egypt. This library was a part of the Library of Alexandria, where the priceless knowledge of the ancient world was preserved. Christian extremists believed that the books and statues kept there promoted demonic and pagan ideologies. Historians believe that on that day, humanity lost knowledge of science, philosophy, and astronomy that took the world another 1,000 years to recover. The rise of Kashmir Shaivism. In the 4th century, a deep and new philosophical form of Shaivism developed in the beautiful valleys of Kashmir. It is also called the trick philosophy. It taught that man and God are not separate, rather a part of Shiva exists in every human being. This philosophy emphasized self-realization and meditation over rituals, making it popular with both commoners and scholars. Kashmir Shaivism later gave birth to many principles of Tantra Shastra and Hatha Yoga that changed the spiritual thinking of the whole of South Asia.
Across time, ancient sages in
76.
Kashmir realized
The silk monopoly. Until the 4th century, the method of making silk was known only to China, and they kept it hidden as a state secret. The punishment for taking silkworms or their eggs out of the country was death. Romans were obsessed with silk and gave China tons of gold in exchange for it. Roman emperors tried to send spies several times to steal this secret, but they always failed. Because of this Chinese monopoly, the Roman economy began to crumble. By the end of the 4th century, the price of a silk garment in Rome had become equal to its weight in gold. Fact 77. The Palace of Demons. When the Chinese traveler Fa Hin reached Pataliputra in India, he saw Emperor Ashoka's old palace, which was then 600 years old. Seeing the massive stone carvings, Fa Hin wrote in his diary, "This palace was not made by humans. It must have been built by demons by joining stones together." Even during the Gupta period, Mauryan architecture used to awe and intimidate people. Fact 78. The real Santa Claus. In the 4th century, a bishop named Nicholas lived in the city of Myra, Turkey. He was famous for quietly donating his vast wealth to the poor and needy. A famous story tells how he secretly threw bags of gold coins through a window to pay for the marriage of a poor man's 3 daughters. These stories of his generosity made him a favorite among children. Centuries later, this Saint Nicholas reached America through Dutch culture and became Santa Claus. This 4th century saint has today become the global face of Christmas. Fact 89. The Golden Age of Ayurveda. In the 4th century, Gupta kings gave a massive boost to medical science. It was during this time that great texts like Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita were revised and new formulas were added. Indian doctors tried to identify and control the symptoms of diseases like cancer using herbs. Strict rules for cleanliness were made in hospitals, and special gardens were prepared for the cultivation of medicinal herbs. Chinese travelers wrote that Indian doctors knew how to make medicine from snake venom and were so skilled in rhinoplasty or reconstructive nose surgery that people from all over the world came to India for treatment. Fact 81. Roman fast food culture. 4th century Roman cities were full of restaurants called thermopolium. These were counter-like shops where hot food was kept in large clay pots or dolia. Since poor Romans lived in cramped apartments or insulae where cooking was unsafe, they bought their dinner from these shops. Spicy wine and lentil meat dishes were served here. These shops were exactly like today's fast food joints. Not only was food available here, but people also gathered to discuss politics and sports, which sometimes even led to riots. Fact 91. The Hunnic bow. At the end of the 4th century, the Huns caused havoc in Europe. The secret to their success was their composite bow, made of wood, horn, and sinew. It could strike from twice the distance of a Roman bow. The Huns could even take accurate aims while turning backwards on a horse. The Romans had no answer to this weapon. Fact 92. The Brick Wonder. The Betergaon Temple. During the Gupta period, a unique temple was built in Betergaon near Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. At that time, most temples were made of stone, but this entire temple was built from burnt bricks and terracotta. Beautiful carvings of gods, goddesses, and scenes from Ramayana and Mahabharata were made on its outer walls. The tall pyramidal structure, or shikara, on its roof was a new beginning in Indian temple architecture. It is India's oldest brick temple whose roof, shikara, is still safe today. It is a symbol of the mastery of Gupta-era civil engineers who created stone-like strength from mud and fire. Fact 93. The refugee crisis. Fearing the Huns, millions of Goths fled to the Roman border, the Danube River, and sought refuge. The Romans let them in, but treated them very badly. Roman officers sold dog meat to starving Goths and took their children as slaves in exchange. This tyranny forced the Goths to rebel, which eventually led to the burning of Rome. This was the worst refugee management in history. Fact 94. The real Indiana Jones, Helena and the True Cross. Emperor Constantine's mother, Helena, went to Jerusalem in 326 AD at the age of 80. She went there to find the tomb of Jesus Christ and the true cross. It is claimed that she found 3 crosses there. To identify the real one, she laid a sick woman on them. The cross that healed her instantly was considered the true cross. Helena is considered the first archaeologist in history. Fact 95. The playboy of the Gupta era, the Nagaraka. In Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra, the daily routine of the Nagaraka, the urban man, is described. He would wake up, apply perfume, chew bait leaf, pan, and go to a club in the evening. He had his own beauty box. Indian men of the Gupta period paid more attention to fashion and grooming than today's models. Fact 96. The first Christmas, 336 AD. Do you think Jesus Christ was born on December 25th? The date is not mentioned in the Bible. In 336 AD, the birthday of Jesus was officially celebrated on December 25th in Rome for the first time. They intentionally chose this date because on this day, Romans celebrated the birthday of the sun god, or Sol Invictus. The Church cleverly turned the worship of the sun into the worship of the Son of God. Fact 98. Rome's GPS. In the 4th century, the Romans created a map of the world, a 13th century copy of which exists today. It was a 22-foot-long scroll. This was not a map of geography, but a road map. It showed the distances between cities and the hotels and inns built on the routes. It was the Google Maps of ancient times.
Fact 88. The last Vestal, 394 AD. The Vestal virgins, who had been protecting Rome's sacred fire for over 1,000 years, were expelled from the temple by Emperor Theodosius in 394 AD, and the fire was extinguished. This was symbolically the death of old Rome. When the last priestess left the temple in tears, people felt that the fall of Rome was now certain, and indeed, Rome was looted 16 years later. Fact 89. Only one religion. Edict of Thessalonica, 380 AD. Emperor Theodosius issued a decree. Nicene Christianity would now be the sole official religion of the Roman Empire. Following this, all other religions and other forms of Christianity, such as Arianism, were declared illegal. Those who were persecuted until yesterday were now in power. Religious freedom had come to an end. Fact 90. The country with free treatment. Free hospitals of India. Fasien wrote that the wealthy in Pataliputra had opened hospitals where the poor, widows, and orphans received free treatment and free food. This was the world's best healthcare system. While disease was considered a punishment for sin in Europe at that time, it was understood as a treatable problem in India. Fact 91. Sanskrit becomes the official language. Rise of Sanskrit. In the Maurya period, the emphasis was on common spoken languages, Prakrit or Pali. However, in the 4th century, Gupta period, Sanskrit was made the official language of India. Sanskrit became the language of all government documents, poems, and science books. This was the Sanskrit Renaissance. Poets like Kalidasa brought it to the common people. Fact 92.
Stilicho, the barbarian savior. At the end of the 4th century, Rome's greatest general was Stilicho. The irony was that he himself was half Vandal, barbarian. He saved Rome many times, but the Roman Senate looked at him with suspicion because his blood was not pure. Eventually, he was declared a traitor and executed. Rome killed its own last protector. Fact 94. Glass of the Rhineland, Frankish glass. In the 4th century, Rome was weakening, but artisans in Germany, the Rhineland, had become experts in glass-blowing. They created designs like the claw beaker. Even as the Roman Empire was collapsing, people remained fond of fine wine and beautiful glasses. Fact 95. Adding the Holy Spirit. Second Ecumenical Council, 381 AD. In a meeting in Constantinople in 381 AD, Christians completed the Holy Trinity. They decided that the Holy Spirit is also God, equal to the Father and the Son. This is where the current form of Christianity we see today was finalized. Fact 95. The death of theater. Greek and Roman theater, drama, had been a source of entertainment for centuries, but in the 4th century, the Church banned it, calling it immoral. Actors were considered sinners and barred from entering the church. For the next 1,000 years, the art of drama almost disappeared in Europe, while it was flourishing in India due to Kalidasa. Fact 96. The pagans' last stand. Symmachus's plea. Roman senator Symmachus gave very emotional speeches to save the old religions. He said, "There cannot be only one path to reach such a great mystery, God." This was the last voice of religious pluralism. The church replied, "There is only one path, and it is ours." Symmachus lost. Fact 97. End of sacrifice. 392 AD. In 392 AD, Theodosius completely banned animal sacrifice to any deity. In the ancient world, religion meant giving sacrifice. The end of sacrifice meant that the old temples were now useless. Without blood, the old gods starved to death, metaphorically. Fact 98. Division of East and West. East versus West, 395 AD. After 395 AD, the two parts of the Roman Empire, Latin West and Greek East, moved in different directions. The West, Rome, kept breaking under barbarian attacks and entered the Dark Ages. The East, Constantinople, grew wealthier and adopted Greek culture. They became strangers to their own brothers. Fact 99. The end of the classical era. End of antiquity. Historians believe that around 400 AD, classical antiquity, the time of ancient Greece and Rome, came to an end. The world now stood on the threshold of the Middle Ages. Faith and sword were now set to take the place of science and logic. Fact 100. Century conclusion. The 4th century was the bridge that connected the Old World to the New World. In this century, Jesus defeated Jupiter, and Sanskrit united India. A person standing in the year 400 did not know that the coming 1,000 years were going to be very dark.